Let's go on a journey to a remarkable moment in history, the California Gold Rush. There is a wealth of stories emanating from this event. In letters, diaries, journals, letter sheets, and newspaper articles, the gold seekers expressed their aspirations, discoveries, determination, frustrations, losses, homesickness, and despair. We have a vision of a rollicking adventure, a raucous, undisciplined era filled with wonderment and breathless anticipation. There is some truth to this, but it was far more complicated than that. The gold rush was an enormous enterprise with many complex moving parts, constantly shape-shifting and initiating wholesale changes in society, economics, politics, and culture. The gold rush embodied elements of whimsy and dissipation, enormous environmental impacts, leaving a legacy with which we still must cope, complex transportation by foot, wagon, steamboat, even dog sleds. There were natural disasters, such as floods and fires. There were the beginnings of civil societies and the development of towns built upon a foundation of risk-taking and adaptation. There were the first steps toward government. The participants were almost exclusively young, male, and unattached. They were often temporary visitors, not wanting to put down roots, but to function as land pirates, plundering anything shiny and then leaving. Women were rare, only 8% of the total population, and much, much less than that in the mining camps. In 1851, Dame Shirley wrote that she was the first woman the miners of Rich Bar on the Feather River had seen in months. As she wrote, she was a, quote-unquote, petticoated astonishment. There were also African Americans, Chinese, Native Americans, all of whom met with prejudice and even attempts at extermination. And yet there were stories of respect. The result of all of this was that the California Gold Rush and the Gold Country became the most ethnically, socially, and culturally diverse spot on Earth. The California Gold Rush was not only a story of the independent miner looking for instant riches and a better life, but it was also the tale of families seeking a new start, even new identities. The gold rush was not just a search for gold. It was an experiment and an improvisation. It was a dazzling, perplexing social kaleidoscope. The event was unique. Consider this. In the history of the world, there have been only 2 events where there has been a mass migration of people to a single spot for a single purpose. The first was the Crusades, from 1095 to 1270, 8 European religious pilgrimages and wars to the Holy Land, its impact stretching over nearly 2 centuries. The other event was the California Gold Rush, and in this case the cultural explosion happened not over decades, but within a matter of months. The gold rush was also very rich. Using the Great Pyramid as a comparison, we all know the Great Pyramid in Egypt as this symbol of the ancient wonders of the world. The Great Pyramid is a huge structure. It is 87 million cubic feet in size. And yet, if you take all of the gold mined in world history, more than 10,000 years, it would form a cube only 60 feet on each side. The Great Pyramid is 400 times the size of that golden cube. Statistics from the California Department of Conservation Division of Mines and Geology indicate that during the history of California from the gold rush to the present, California was the source of more than 106 million troy ounces of gold, which would form a cube about 20 feet on each side, or about a third of all of the gold mined in world history. Gold is precious because it is so rare, and California's gold rush played a huge part in the collection of that golden treasure. The gold rush may have been rich, but the event was also haunted by the specter of failure and danger. 80% of all miners failed, but they almost uniformly viewed the gold rush as the greatest adventure of their lives. Death was a constant presence. 20% of all who came to the gold rush died within 6 months of arriving in the gold fields, from disease, accidents, violence, or suicide. There are sad stories of those who spent their last pennies to travel to the land of golden dreams, only to die soon after arrival. These are grim notes in the gold rush lore. The gold rush was a monumental gamble, what the philosopher Henry David Thoreau called, quote-unquote, the world's raffle. But for most people of the time, the greatest failure was not risking a journey and going bust in a faraway land, but in not taking a chance in the first place. The landscape was much more than a natural resource treasure house. The gold country was also the realm of uncontrollable fantasy, a fabled province promising freedom and endless opportunity, and, for many, an escape and a new start. California during the gold rush was a society transformed by a contagion. That contagion was gold fever. This powerful force verged on fanaticism and appeared unshakable. The 19th century historian Hubert Howe Bancroft memorably exclaimed that the gold fever, quote, touched the cerebral nerve that quickened humanity and sent a thrill throughout the system. It tingled in the ear and at the finger ends. It buzzed about the brain and tickled in the stomach. It warmed the blood and swelled the heart, unquote. 20th century scholars Thomas Henry Watkins and Roger Olmsted felt that the fever was, quote, like some kind of hallucinogen. Gold heightened, distorted, and accelerated reality, propelling spurts, bursts, and great explosive movements. The chronicles of the years that accompanied and followed the gold rush is not so much a history as the record of a seismograph, unquote. The California gold rush was an earthquake, and we still feel the tremors to this moment. The gold rush has never ended. With all its clarity and contradiction, with all its imperfect perfections, it is still with us. In the final analysis, the gold rush is a story of a journey, a search, and taking a risk. But that is also our personal story, as well as the history of the American West and the history of California. Whether you arrived here yesterday or your families have been here for generations, we are all products of that complicated and endlessly fascinating moment in time. If you seek the California gold rush, just look around.